before a baby is born, people will like have a list of names. But then once they see the face, they're like, oh, it's totally an Abigail.
That happened to me.
Oh,
My
really?
name was going to be Ashley.
Oh my God, my name is going to be Ashley.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny. The reason my mom didn't choose it is because the nurse came in and was like, there's been 10 babies today named Ashley. Is yours the same reason?
My cousin named her baby Ashley like before I was born, and then my mom was like, okay.
There's too many.
I can't do that. That's funny. What year were you born?
87.
Me too.
Really?
Yeah.
I was like afraid to say it. Like everybody's younger than me these days.
No. I mean, I think everyone's,
It was the year of Ashley.
It was.
Year of the rabbit.
Year of the rabbit, year of Ashley. Wait, what's your birthday? What's your sun, moon, and rising?
April 10th.
So you're at Aries.
Aries. I don't know
Your
my
birthday's
others.
coming up really soon.
Really soon.
Do you have co-star or something that I can look at your chart?
I don't.
Well, I'm a Libra, so I'm your sister sign, but like the equal and opposite, which is like creates a cool energy. Because it's like sister signs are like signs that are opposite each other on the wheel, and they want the same things, but they go about it in different ways. And so Aries is like a cardinal sign. Same with Libra. It means it starts off a season. It's like starts off spring, starts off fall, and is like has leadership qualities and like a go-getter attitude. Aries is like the fire element of the cardinal, and Libra's the air. So it's like cerebral, whereas Aries is like, this is how we'll get it done. Like, and is passionate and like connected to like process, and is also like really good at like making decisions and just going for it.
Okay.
Whereas like Libra can be really like, well, I could see it.
I feel like that's me. Maybe like my rising or something.
I was gonna say maybe your moon or rising, because
I think I might be a Virgo somewhere and a
Virgo
Scorpio
rising.
somewhere.
Oh.
I think.
Oh, I love Scorpio placement so much. My Mercury is in Scorpio, so that's like your communication. And I feel like I'm surrounded by a lot of Scorpios or Scorpio placements because we like know how to go to the depths right away. And like, I love that. Maybe I'm Virgo rising, and Virgo's like analytical, like structural, like, but also they're the therapist of the zodiac, but then they have like this spiritual side that they like kind of like don't want people to see, but like it's there. But they're like more like making a list and like, but they're also a little bit chaotic. And then
this sounds like me. I feel like I
maybe
have
you're
some of that.
Virgo rising, Virgo moon. But I feel like you might have Scorpio. I'd be curious if you have Scorpio moon or Scorpio rising. Anyway, I feel like you might have Scorpio rising. Anyway,
I didn't even know you were like so into astrology. I would have like included that in my research and like talked about it.
I mean, we did a little
archetypes
and patterns.
Yeah.
And I use
Archetypes
astrology.
are really interesting.
Yeah, like any modality that is like noticing patterns, and they all exist within us. You know, it's just like what's shining through the most right now. And I just think it's cool to have systems in general that you can like look to. And for me, it's like, I always thought astrology was cool and like was always into it. But then once I started to really see like, okay, all of my Aquarius friends have this type of trait, or all of my like Scorpio friends do this thing. And then I started to like, it's like learning a language. Like you first learn some words and you're like, okay, I can like order food a little bit. And then you're like, learn how to like conjugate the verbs, and that's like learning maybe the different planets and then you learn how to put like sentences together, and that's like the houses. So
There's
it's like
a lot.
It's like it takes forever.
Yeah.
I never did like, I've always wanted to enroll in like an astrology school or something and like really study it, but I use it to inform my sound baths because it's like there's always some sort of collective energy at play that's kind of shining through and coming through in different ways for all of us, but there usually is like a larger story and narrative, and I just start to notice it with my clients or with myself or friends, and I'll be like, okay, I'm noticing this theme, I want to bring it up and like have that be something that we can kind of all land on and come together about and around, and use it to set intentions for the sound bath. So it often is like a nice entry point for a lot of intention setting, basically.
I love that. Like right now it's something of the Aries. Like I know it's Aries like season, but like there's
we
something.
just had a new moon in Aries.
I was gonna say, okay. I was like, it's deeper than that though.
So a new moon is when the sun and the moon are on the same side of the earth. And the full moon is when the moon is on the opposite side of the sun. And that's why the sun is illuminating it in its fullness. So it's like showing all the shadows. But when they're a new moon, they're together. They're conjunct. And so it's like extra energy in that sign. So like a lot of Aries. And like 5 planets were in Aries last week, like Chiron also, which is like the wounded healer, which was like very triggering for a lot of people, was in Aries. So there was like a lot of Aries energy, but it was also like the equinox. So it's like always very Aries moment of like fresh start, newness. Like the Aries archetype, it's like, it starts off the zodiac. It's the first sign. So Aries is like, I am. Like, here I am. And so it's like this emergence, like how spring is. Like you come out from the darkness, from the shadows, and it's like, okay, I'm going to stand strong in my self-worth. Like, it's like really empowering.
Yeah.
And then the last sign of the zodiac is Pisces, which we just left, which is I dream. So it's like, that's like the trajectory.
It's so true about Pisces.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, it's good because you come out of this like hazy, like kind of, also Pisces is Neptunian. Like it's this energy of like illusion and fantasy, which is fun to indulge in, but it's also like not grounded. And Aries like brings you back into like, okay, how are we going to get these dreams manifest though? Like, what are we going to do about that?
Yeah.
So it's like a cool thing. So I always like to bring in astrology, even just as like to pose questions to people in the sound bath so they can deepen their experience. Because it's like, yeah, you can go to a sound bath and lay there and have like a million thoughts running through your head. And like, you know, you're still absorbing all the frequencies, and that vibrational experience is still happening on a physiological level, but on like the level of meditation or mind or taking it deeper, like it is nice to have an intention. It is nice to be more like, focused in in like why you're even there or what you're doing. So I like astrology for that, because it gives you kind of a place to start.
Yeah. I just have a random question and then we'll like get into all the other stuff. But like it happened to me recently. I'm like noticing, because I know there's like the root chakra and that's supposed to be like the grounded space within, or the energy that's like the groundedness. But lately, like I think I was trying to solve problems, let's say like in my life, like certain things that like I'm thinking are not working or whatever. And I was noticing I was like looking externally, like, oh, like this dynamic with this person I'm not really liking, or this, and I like had a moment where I was like, bring it back to me. It really doesn't matter what's going on with these other people and these dynamics. And when I felt it in my body about like getting centered and grounded, I felt it more like in solar plexus, which was interesting, because I was like, oh, you would think from what we've been taught, and for me it's like very high level, like I don't know too much, but I would have thought it would have been like I would feel it physically like a little bit lower, like in the root.
Well, I would say that's a really, first of all, that's just like an amazing awareness, because I feel like most people are not able to connect with their body in that way, and everything really lives at the level of the body. I feel like the novice path in the spiritual sense is like ascension, and like trying to like be in the astral and not be grounded and embodied. But then once you realize it actually starts with the body, and that's how you can go even further, like you need to first feel your feelings rather than think your feelings. And so being able to locate where that is in your body, so that's already like a great insight. And then being able to locate it is amazing. And I would always say trust your intuition rather than like what you've been taught or told, like, oh, you would think you would go to root chakra. Well, maybe your root chakra is already, you have a sense of like safety and security and foundation already really rooted. And also it's not linear too. So like you go to where you're being called. So the solar plexus, from what I would read into that, is like your sense of self-worth.
That's what I was thinking.
And that's what it sounds like. It's like why am I outsourcing my needs, or why am I like looking for a sense of self-worth outside of myself when here it lives? So it's giving you the answer. And then the last thing I want to say about that is that was such a nice like flipping of the script to be like, okay, but what about me? Where like I'm noticing these things outwardly, but like how do I return home? And that's an amazing insight. But I do also think that we have to have those mirrors outside of us that can point us back to ourselves, and that becomes the entry point. A lot of times it becomes the portal we have to walk through, because sometimes it's easier to see things from that level. And then when you make the connection, like, oh, like I say this a lot to people that are like dating. It's like, okay, if you're getting ghosted a lot or whatever, and you keep seeing this pattern, and you're like, oh, this is, you know, first you might go to like what's wrong with me? And then you might get into a sense of self-worth, like, no, what's wrong with these guys? And then you might be like, maybe there's nothing wrong. And maybe this is all showing me a pattern of where I'm ghosting myself. or where like it's showing me outwardly what I'm doing internally. So I often think I often try to like be like, but where are you doing that to yourself? So these people were all like mirrors and golden shadows for you to be like, I'm noticing these patterns, let me bring it back to me. And then that locked you into like this sense of connecting with your solar plexus, which is like, that's where you shine.
Yeah.
And as an Aries, like that's the solar plexus is connected to the sun. And Aries is like, sun in Aries is like a very beautiful, I don't think it's exalted, but it's like a great place for it to be. It feels at home there. It's not its home. Leo's the home, but like it's in Aries, it's really nice. It might be exalted. I'm not sure. Don't come for me anymore. But like it's wanting you to connect with that inner light. And that's where it lives.
It's crazy you say that because I was speaking to somebody like the other day, and I don't know how we got in the conversation. He was saying like, he just connects back to his heart and the energy in his heart. And I was like, oh, that's interesting that you say like identifying the energy in your heart, because that's something I've been paying more and more attention to, and trying to like really gauge like what are moments or spaces or like even environments that I feel like it's lighting up, and times when it's like dimming, and what like how do I tap in more consistently, because I feel like if I'm operating from my heart, that's probably the most authentic place, things like that. And then he's like, what's something recent that made you feel like it was like adding energy? And I was like, and like sounds simple, but being in the sun. I went for a hike and I was in the sun for like an hour, and I felt like it was like pouring my cup.
Yeah.
Like I really felt that way. And then after that, I spoke to somebody I hadn't spoken to in a long time. And I was like kind of just expressing like some things, like some positive things I thought about them. And like it felt really easy to do because I felt tapped in.
Yeah, and you were full. So it's easy then to like give.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I think that everyone has their like whatever it is, nature spaces that they can like really come home to themselves. There's stuff I could get into about how the sun is said to like emit the frequency of Om, and like there's certain things that like can get really esoteric there too, about like a lot of astrologers or people talk about how we're in a different area of the Milky Way galaxy where there's like like our sun is being activated in a new way, and there's all these solar flares and things, which is like causing the northern lights to like be lower than they've normally been. Like they were in America recently, like in Wisconsin or Michigan or something, was getting the northern lights, which happens from time to time, but like there's been a lot of solar activity, and so like then it gets like esoteric, like there's frequencies coming from the sun that are like really good for you. And then there's this whole thing about how it's the best when you eat food that was grown in the same sunlight, not just the same like soil and area, but it also the sun that it's receiving is the same sun that you receive, because it's like it's light codes. So there's something there. There's like some sort of like frequency medicine from the sun, vibrational medicine that like when you're eating food that's also received that, it's like in alignment with your body, and it is even more nutritious or something.
Love that.
Maybe
it's all new information.
Yeah. Take what works, leave the rest.
We got like deep into like things. Yeah. But I wanted to start.
Okay.
I wanted to start just giving kind of like this description I found. I don't even know before I do these episodes, I go into like full. You know who Nardwar is?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I'm like kind of like I just will dig wherever I can.
That's the best.
Yeah.
That's like hot ones too. Like that makes the best interviews because they like dig up stuff. Yeah, and it's like not your typical boring like same question.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So when I was diving, I don't know where I dove. Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, why do I feel like him?
Good reference.
Yeah.
1987. Yeah. I'm with you on all
Canadian
the references.
too, so yeah.
Oh, you're Canadian too?
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, he's amazing.
The
It's
best
funny.
people are Canadian. Some of the best comedians too.
Yeah, there's some good ones.
There's some good ones.
Yeah. Canadians are getting respect these days. We didn't always. But yeah, so I found this description and I was like, I love this description. So I want to like read it.
Okay.
Sound healer, breathwork facilitator, intuitive guide, and artist based in Los Angeles. Utilizes many modalities to help clients penetrate their bodies, establish strong boundaries, and open portals to the magic and abundance within. That is such a beautiful description. And when I read it, I was like, okay, like because I'm familiar with your work and your artwork and even the way that like you do your sound baths, like everything you put together, first of all, is like beautiful. But also, yeah, like penetrate their bodies, establish strong boundaries, and open portals to the magic and abundance within. I feel like that's such a powerful like mission too. So that's what you do in a couple like magical sentences, but I also wanted to like hear from your words what you do and what you like have been embodying lately, because I'm sure it's evolved over the years too.
Yeah, and it's always gonna evolve because I'm always a student and a seeker first and foremost, and I find that modalities are best when you're mixing them and kind of it's this alchemy of like very, unique things that all come together, and you're weaving this tapestry with all these different threads. And I'm always going to be following my curiosity to lead me into the next thing. But the kind of thesis statement and thing that I find is the through line is portals. Is whether it's visual portals with the art, or whether it's like sonic experiences or immersive experiences where we're kind of like entering into and walking through a threshold together. I'm always trying to create transformational experiences that feel immersive, that feel interactive, and that are really portals to, like how we were just talking about, returning to yourself, returning home, to your home frequency, to this sense of I am, to this sense of self-worth, and realizing that you are the healer. It's all you, and everything's a mirror, and we can utilize all these tools and tricks and things to help us kind of just return home. So yeah, I think it can show up in many different ways, and ultimately, how I've started everything was just because I was curious, I was excited. It was healing for me. It was something that I wanted to learn more about. And in human design, I'm a 1-3, which is the investigator and the martyr. And like, it really points to like always wanting to do research and study things to like a intense level. And I'm always going to be that person. So like, I feel like I really go down the rabbit hole with things a lot. And then I want to share that learning, that education. And that's always like the why behind the how and the what, however it looks, is I really want to share tools and tricks for people to feel empowered. And then the martyr is kind of like needing to then experience the thing in real life too. So I'm always trying to weave in education and experience together. So yeah, that's the portal we walk through.
It's cool to hear that portal is like the word that you're like, no matter what it is, that's kind of like the constant.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have thought that, but that makes sense. You started with art before sound healing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Describing your art, like for me, I was like, well, mixed media, first of all, right? And where you combine your photography and graphic design. Is there any other way that you describe like kind of like what it is, or that's a good way to say it?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like now some of these words have become muddied or dirty from like NFTs or like that the art space is already just in such like a strange spot. But I used to call it digital collage, which I feel like it is for sure. And it's mixing, photography. And that was born from me just being a traveler and a seeker and taking photos while being able to explore these amazing places. And then my fascination with magical realism and surrealism and just kind of like things that are slightly skewed from our everyday perception or the dimension in which we play in, but like feeling like you can tune the dial just slightly, like 1 degree that way or this way, and maybe see like a whole other universe. So I'm always trying to like, that's the portal. It's like, oh, well, what if the sky was like this or this, just kind of creating elements where it's like, you're not quite sure what's real or what's not real. So that was kind of born from, me traveling and wanting to share it, but then feeling like injecting in some magic, sprinkling a little fairy dust on things, and then the digital collage was born.
Right now, first of all, one of your pieces is my screensaver.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it's one with the hand. I just put it on yesterday, so I'm like not even like super familiar with it. I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this one. Nice. Yeah, the hands, and then I think there's like crystals in the middle.
Yeah, that's a good series.
Yeah.
I've done a few like that where it's just like, it's called The Universe Experiencing Itself.
Okay.
And it's kind of pointing to how we're all alchemists and like we can kind of conjure and create our realities.
Okay, so they all have like messages behind.
Yeah, okay. But also like I trust whatever, the person who's receiving it, whatever they feel like it means, that's what it means. You know what I mean? But I have an intention often going into it, or like an idea, the impetus for creating in the first place, but then it's out of my hands. Then it's like, what do you see? What do you feel?
Yeah. Yeah, because I was gonna ask, I was like, oh, like what, because there's so much to it, I'm like, I wonder like what the intention is with these pieces, maybe to like open people up, like open up their perspective, or like what's possible in life, like that like common theme.
Yeah. I think empowering people to feel how powerful they are and to maybe like shake things up or perceive things in a new way, or maybe be like a pattern interrupt, because I find that that is like always the catalyst for transformation, is like, you know, those big moments, but then there's also those smaller micro moments, but the big moments of like breakups or loss in some other way. And, you know, grief is such a huge portal for transformation because it really brings you into presence. And I find that once you're like brought into presence, brought into your body, brought into the now moment, all the other stuff that like clouds us all the time, where we're like future tripping or like reflecting on the past or in regret or guilt or shame, when we're brought in really into the present moment and you're reminded like, this is my life right now, like here I am, then it kind of, all that stuff kind of fades away, and it doesn't have the same weight that it used to. And then I feel like you're able to then step into change in a more empowered way, or realize that you have the opportunity in every moment to make your life more aligned, more resonant, and no longer run the script that you've been running, that we all run, this software that we kind of have downloaded from society, from our parents, from ancestral trauma. I mean, we're carrying so much. I always say there's like a lot of people in the room when it's just you or something, because you have all these voices, these things that is like, you don't even realize you're running this script all the time. And so a pattern interrupt or something that kind of just brings you into presence, brings you into your body, is often that moment where you can suddenly be more empowered and start to make those changes, or not be so afraid of change even in the first place, and realize that, like, you know, we have chapters in our lives, and how exciting it is that we have autonomy and sovereignty, and that we can, you know, make our lives as beautiful and as powerful and meaningful as we'd like to. So yeah, I think I have like lofty hopes and dreams for the things I put out into the world, but it can just happen like that in a flash. And so as long as it just resonates with one person, even like in my whole entire lifetime, like then I've done it, you know? And I also try to remember that. But it's also reminders for me, because like, you know, I forget all these things too as life continues on, you're in traffic, and, you know,
it all goes out the window. Yeah, when somebody cuts you off.
Yeah, there's a Ram Dass quote that's like, you think you're enlightened to go spend a week with your family. It's like, well, that's when your meditation practice shows up. That's when all the work that you've done that's cumulative over time, it's like going to mind gym. When you are confronted with things, or when you're in the moments of stress or whatever, that's when you really learn a lot about yourself. And then you also learn like what's not working and what is working. And also you can see growth. And so, yeah, anyway, I'm kind of getting off track, but ultimately, yeah, they're portals for people to maybe see that. It's a mirror for them to understand their own power.
I like the idea of pattern interrupt. I've never really thought of that. And like, I've always noticed throughout my life, like, let's say something happened that like, yeah, kind of stopped me in my tracks. A lot of times, like the examples I'm thinking of right now were like more so like negative things. Like I'm just remembering moments where like, let's say I'm bawling my eyes out. Like I thought things were going one way, something happened, now I have to go this way, but I'm feeling like I'm at square one. And I'm sad about it because that's not what I was anticipating. But there was always a feeling of like freedom in that moment too. Like it felt like all the voices and everything that felt very busy calmed all the way down. I was like back to ground zero and felt very connected. Even though I was like sad, I felt like very close to like my source.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I do think that like those moments where you're, and what I'm also hearing in that is like deep grief over what you thought. It's the loss of a timeline, even a loss of a part of yourself. But then in a way that's also very freeing, because then you're not defined by this metric of success or identity or whatever it is that was lost, or that you know is like been shaken up or whatever it means. But I think that grief shows up in a lot of ways, and it is one of the most powerful emotions to feel, and it is really expansive because it reminds us that we're bigger than any other thing that we have attached to in terms of our identity, or like how we relate to the world, like whether it's a breakup or, you know, getting fired or whatever it is, that these things that we lose, it gives us then so much more, because you realize you don't need to be defined by that. And it also brings you into presence. I feel like when you're crying like that and having that moment, and you're just like in your dark night of the soul, like just like a puddle, like you're really alive, and that aliveness is so freeing. And then also, like, sometimes if it's the worst case scenario, the thing that you were like fearing the most, and it happens, and then you're like, okay, it happened, and I'm still here, and I can handle it.
There's so much to get into. Okay, how about we'll start with sound healing, because I think that's something, I mean, I've done it, let's say like a handful of times. I love the experience. I like try to explain to people what it is, and I don't think I'm very good at explaining it. So I'd love for you to explain it and like kind of talk about like how you got into it and all that.
Yeah, well, simply, I mean, we hear the term sound bath a lot, and I think it can be confusing for people, because people think, is there water involved? Do I need to bring a bathing suit? But essentially, we're just bathing in sound. We're bathing in frequency. And everyone has their own approach and their own style, and every practitioner is going to be different. My approach is actually, we use the sound as an entry point into silence. So it's almost like a Trojan horse. It's like a red herring. We think it's about sound and frequency, which it is, because it is on a very physiological level in training the brain to come into a meditative state. And this happens naturally for everyone. It happens to me while I play as well, and I've done experiments hooked up to brain scans, and we all drop into theta, which is this meditative state. So I also like to say it's kind of like a hack or a detour for meditation, because there's nothing that you need to do. It's about receiving, it's about being, it's trusting that your body knows exactly how to receive sound. And we've all had the experience of being moved by music and what that can evoke, and how music is this like universal language that can really take you into memories or kind of stir stuff up emotionally for you. And also it brings like collectives and groups and community into coherence together when we go to a concert and we get in this like trance together. So we all know that, and music has been used throughout time and across cultures for ceremony, for celebration, for all kinds of things. So it's intrinsically this rhythm that's within us. And the first thing that we experience is the sound of our mother's heartbeat. So we have this rhythm, and that's our first sense before anything else. So sound is so built in, and our bodies are always looking for a pulse to kind of latch onto. Women are tuned to the moon, and so are the tides, and affects water and everything. So we're all being affected by these pulses that have these unseen and unheard effects on our bodies. And so part of my goal also with sharing sound and frequency is to allow people to connect with the idea of vibration as this kind of really pervasive soup that we're swimming in all the time that's affecting us. We know when we walk into a room, we feel the vibes. We understand like, oh, something's weird in here. Maybe there was just a fight, or this feels really good, or I feel really good around this person, or whatever. So we're really tuned into the idea of vibes, and that's vibration. And we think of sound as that which we perceive through our ears as this auditory experience, but it's similar to the light spectrum. We have this narrow range of vision. Roy G. Biv, we learned this in school. And we know outside of that, there's ultraviolet light and there's infrared light. We know it exists. It's not within our range of perception, but it's affecting us. And it's the same with sound. We have this narrow range of frequency that we perceive, but then outside of that, there's ultrasound, which we know is used in medicine, and infrasound. So we're kind of swimming in this soup of noise all the time. We don't even realize it, but Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, radio waves, it's all around us all the time. And it's creating kind of chaotic frequencies that can create anxiety or make people feel a little bit off. And so a sound bath is a pattern interrupt, because it's creating a frequency that is rising above all that noise, and it's creating a pulse that is really healing and relaxing because it's steady. Because we're submerged in like very chaotic frequencies all the time. So to have a steady pulse, our body is like, oh, I can relax here. I can surrender into this. I don't have to work so hard. And it's looking for that pulse that I mentioned, where our bodies are always kind of looking for something to latch onto so that it doesn't have to create that rhythm, that pulse on its own. So that's kind of what a sound bath is. It creates a central point of focus for the mind, the body, the soul, the spirit, the heart, the brain, all kinds of things to come into harmony and coherence and kind of have this anchor. So it gives you something to lean into, to rest into, to surrender to. And of course, with all meditation, there's going to be thoughts that arise. There's kind of this idea that meditation is this unachievable goal of like sitting there in pure bliss and there's no thoughts. We're always going to have thoughts, but it's really about our relationship to the thoughts. And that's what meditation is. It's, are you really identifying with the contents, or are you identifying as the container that's having this experience of like thoughts passing like clouds in the sky? And are you noticing yourself noticing? Are you connecting with the witness behind the thoughts and not necessarily going into the story? Or are you noticing the spaciousness between thoughts and maybe trying to, even if it's just for a microsecond, like luxuriating in that? These are kind of prompts that I start a sound bath with, just to kind of set the tone, to think about sound in a new way, to think about vibration and how we're being affected by things that aren't in our range of perception, but are still sound and are still affecting us all the time. And maybe start to even take ownership and accountability for the vibration that we're emitting and how that's affecting people and ourselves and our plants and whatever it is. So I think in a lot of ways, I really care about talking about the science of sound, because there's so much there, and it's very, very rooted in this deep lineage of ancient healing that is so intrinsic to humanity. And there's so much more we could be doing with it at the same time in medicine. And that's something that I really want to step into more, is really legitimizing sound as a medical tool. And so talking about ultrasound and knowing that it's already being used in medicine to create images, and knowing that we use sound to break up kidney stones, and like there's other things that we could be doing with it. So there's a lot there. It's very rich, but ultimately for just going to a sound bath, whether it's at a yoga studio or you saw it online on Eventbrite, whatever it is, all it is an opportunity for you to bathe in frequencies, maybe attuning to your own vibrational nature, maybe giving yourself spaciousness to sit in stillness and silence through the entry point of sound. And even just take an hour to not look at your phone or to look at a screen, and how profound that is. And when you decide to invest in yourself in time with nothing, when there's no output or goal or desire that you need to get out of it, it's just investing in yourself as being, that already starts to have a ripple effect into your everyday life. And then that just creates more spaciousness and connection to self, and just by choosing yourself and investing in that. So I always say, even before you even arrive at the sound bath, when you've decided you want to go, that's the hardest part, because then you're choosing yourself, you're choosing to be in stillness and silence, you're choosing to be in community, you're choosing to like have a pattern interrupt, do something different, do something new. And that's already the work. And then you just get to show up and receive and enjoy, and kind of listen to some strange sounds.
What are the differences? Because like, even let's say, I don't know if you have Insight Timer, or like somebody just wants to pull it up on YouTube, like they can't make it to in person. You'll notice that it'll say like the frequency, like 500, and different frequencies tap into potentially, I don't know, it'll be like the frequency of like forgiveness, or the frequency. And I think that's kind of like abstract, like somebody who doesn't know the science behind it. So like,
and it's not universal either. Like, I think so the reason I went into that whole diatribe about sound is because I felt like, oh my God, there's so much out of our control, and there's so much frequency, and I'm feeling overwhelmed by it. And there are frequencies that are bad and good, and like what I was learning about 432 hertz versus 440, which I can get into in a moment. And then I was like, well, what can I do? Well, I can inject frequencies that I know to be healing into my everyday life, and my body will choose those. It'll opt for that over the other things. And then that sent me down a path of like studying frequency. And so at first I was very like righteous in my ideas around, oh, this is bad and this is good. And what I've come to realize is I don't think there are necessarily any bad frequencies. I mean, there are frequencies that are shown to have specific effects on our nervous systems that might be harmful. For instance, there are certain frequencies that like the military uses to disperse crowds. 17 hertz is what like big cats will purr at, which is below our range of hearing actually, to paralyze prey. But then cats, when they purr, like little house cats, that's 50 hertz, which is shown to heal bones. And like physiotherapists will use 50 hertz in like tuning forks or in like other electrostim type of things if you go there and you're rehabilitating some part of your body. That's also why cats can like do all the crazy stuff they can do, because they have this built-in kind of frequency and vibration that heals their bones. So it's true that there is a universal kind of way of certain frequencies have been shown to do things, but I think it's not so simple. So the 432, 440 hertz argument is that all instruments now are in the Western world, if you're going to play in a band and you want it to sound good with the other instruments and the other players, your instrument should be tuned to 440 hertz, which is the middle A on the piano. That's what 440 hertz is referring to. And it should be tuned to that. There was this whole kind of conspiracy theory that is actually a frequency that is harmful to our bodies, and it used to be tuned down to 432, and that's what people back in the day used to use, and then it became like this universal thing that was decided on in the 30s. And there's some ideas about who started that in the 30s, and it relates back to like World War II and Hitler and all this stuff. So you can go on a deep dive if you want. But I do think mind over matter. I do think our intention and our thoughts can override frequency. There's this amazing sound practitioner called Jonathan Goldman. Check out his music on Spotify or whatever. It's beautiful. And he also preaches about the power of humming, which we can talk about too, which is so beautiful, to create your own frequency and vibration. But he has this formula, which is frequency plus intention equals healing. So the frequency is important, definitely. But your intention is going to direct the whole thing. Your intention is going to shape what the frequency is doing. So if your intention listening to 432 or 440 is that this is healing, it's going to be healing for you. I don't think that we should outsource our power all the time to these other things and think, oh my God, this is good or bad. I don't even know if I agree in good or bad at the end of the day. I think it's very black. I think it's very gray. It's this idea of like divisiveness and binary thinking, I think, has gotten us into a lot of problems and taking us away from this feeling of like connection and oneness and the collective, when it's empowering to know that we have a say in that and that can direct the experience. But yeah, there are some people that if you do subscribe to the idea of like certain frequencies being connected to certain emotional states or this or that, people say 528 is the frequency of love. And I have a bowl set that's all 528 hertz. Like I can play in those realms, absolutely. And if someone is really, really drawn to certain things and they want to curate an experience around that, or if you want to listen to sounds online that are binaural beats that are specific for like theta healing, or binaural beats that are designed to help you study and be more focused, like maybe it's a beta binaural, those for sure. Mind over matter though, like you can direct that experience. So I would say don't be too righteous about it, don't be too rigid. But if you do feel in your heart or in your body that a sound or frequency feels really good, trust that over everything, because it's going to be different for each of us. And ultimately, what I would love is for people to feel really empowered in their own ability to connect with their body and what feels good and what feels right, and not outsource that to other people and what they've said.
Right. I'm thinking of like the process of like, let's say like you're listening to sound, you're coming within, and then potentially like once you get there, you realize like there could be some like blockages. And I was reading that you were talking about the fact that the body keeps score. So I think that's a really interesting concept. So I was like curious, like, first of all, like for you to elaborate on it, but also like if it's possible to like eliminate that score, or is it always kind of there? Let's say you have like a certain trauma and it's like it created like some sort of like pathway or ridge internally. Like, can it be fully healed, or is it like, do you build upon it? Like, how does that work? I would assume that what you do with breath work is something that helps kind of clear that stuff out. But yeah, I want to know from your words.
I mean, I do believe that at any point in our lives, no matter how old we are, we always have the ability to heal ourselves, to move through past trauma, to clear ancestral. In the yogic tradition, the Vedic tradition, they're called samskaras, which is like deep psychic grooves that we carry. And often people will talk about this in somatic work, about a charge that's built up in your body. So you even know that feeling of like you almost get into a car accident and you don't, but you still have that like that jolt, that feeling, and then it kind of like lives in your body, maybe the rest of the day, maybe the rest of the year, maybe the rest of your life. And so what trauma is said to be, and there's lots of definitions of it, is an incomplete nervous system response. And it's often something that's too much, too fast, too soon. And then we store that. So even a trauma can be a surprise birthday party that you just weren't ready for, and all these people kind of jump out of nowhere, and you're like, and then every year around your birthday, you might not realize it, but you're like holding tension because you're kind of bracing yourself again. So it doesn't even have to be necessarily something that was bad. And there's obviously big T trauma, little t trauma. And then there's stuff that we just carry in our DNA from, and this is, there's tons of studies that have been shown that like mice that were shocked, with physical shocks by something, with a food or something, then even their offspring who never were shocked, when they're introduced to that food or whatever that trigger was, they have the response as if they were shocked. So it lives in our DNA, right? And we carry this. But we're here. I believe that the majority of people here, and probably you listening to this, watching this, whatever, you are breaking ancestral chains. Like I wholeheartedly believe that. I think that that's the point we are right now in society. And so we can at any moment just release that. We don't have to carry that anymore. And it's a conscious choice that you can make. And so breath work, sound baths, other meditation tools, things that are pattern interrupts in general can help clear that. So that's why I kind of mentioned the vibrational experience of sound, and not just like the psychoacoustic nature of sound, but like the vibroacoustic nature of it as this physical experience. Because in a way, it almost is like a deep tissue massage. Sound can kind of get in those grooves and those nooks and crannies that other things can't quite reach. Sound travels 5 times faster in water. We're made of water. It can go through bones and tissue and muscles and kind of get into those spaces where we are storing things on this energetic, vibrational level, but it is very also physiological. So I always try to bring people into the level of the body with these experiences, because I do think that that is our entry point to healing. You can go to therapy for decades and know your patterns, know you have this abandonment wound, know that it's triggered by this person, know when you're playing into it, and yet still not break out of it. And a lot of people do, because we live in the level of the mind. And so we can get really, really clever about knowing our patterns and knowing it's happening, but are we actually integrating that into the body? And so also these opportunities for when we're in spaciousness, those are our integration moments to allow the body to actually like feel that and rest into it. So I will often say that meditation can be a pitfall for people that are already very much in their mind, and we all are in like Western society. This idea of I think, therefore I am, the Descartes idea, has made us identify with our thoughts as like who we are. That's not an Eastern way of being at all. It's very Western. And so we've prioritized our mind. And the mind is great. It's a beautiful tool and we want to work with it. But coming into the body, I feel like, is the work now. And so often I'll say, where do you feel the sound in your body? And even what we were talking about earlier, noticing how you feel around someone, where that is in your body, getting really attuned to, even in this moment, asking yourself, am I in my body right now? And if so, what is calling to me in this moment? And just starting to have those little micro moments during your day to just get more clear on that. And then we can start to notice, oh, I do have some tension here. Or, oh, I do feel something here. And then the next question would be, is it yours or is it someone else's? Are you carrying that around because you picked it up? Maybe you picked it up today. Maybe you picked it up scrolling social media. Maybe you picked it up 10 years ago. Maybe it's your mom's. Maybe it was always there. Maybe you were born with it. It's ancestral. And so then it's a process of releasing and letting go and surrendering and clearing. And so that can be done in so many ways. So breathwork is an amazing tool because, again, it's creating this pattern interrupt, this altered state through altered traits. So we're creating a new pattern of breath. You're using your breath as a tool to regulate or dysregulate your nervous system. There's different breathwork patterns. Some are supposed to like amp you up, that kind of actually put you into a fight or flight state. Those are active breathwork practices. That's what you'll often see if someone's like, oh, come to this breathwork, and it'll be like holotropic breathwork, which is and it's like really intense, or Wim Hof even, where you kind of activate your body into the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight state, because by reaching there, you're able to then release and clear stuff that lives on that level, charges that you've built up that when you're in fight or flight that haven't been discharged. So you kind of work yourself up to that, and then you can heal it from there. And then there's the other breath work pattern, which is more gentle, all about dropping into your rest and digest. So it's slower, more through the nose, longer exhales than inhales, other patterns like that, that then you can kind of allow yourself to release and surrender because you're dropping into that kind of yin place. So different breath work for different people. It's all going to be different. And I definitely recommend going to a breath work session because they're so powerful. And it's so cool that it's just you and your breath, and that you can activate that part of you, that you can use your breath and get high on your own supply to like completely transform your life. I mean, sometimes I say a breathwork session can be like 10 years of therapy in one go. When you're ready for it, it happens so quick. So I love that. So this is all on the level of the body because, yeah, that's where we store things. And we can often, I think a lot of people on the spiritual path, they want to ascend, they want to go to these higher places, they don't really want to be embodied. It's hard. It's hard to be here on Earth School incarnated at this time. It's so chaotic. It's so hectic. It's only going to get even crazier. But it's also happening to like, I think we're on an exponential path of like stuff clearing faster than ever before. And knowing that you have the power to do that. You don't have to carry your whole lineage anymore. And, you know, it's almost like you can take that backpack off, put that down. You don't have to carry that. So I think that all of these practices and modalities are there for you, and it just depends where you're at, and explore them all, see what lands. In conjunction, they all work even better together. And yeah, we're really just like attuning to our bodies, feeling into what it feels like to be here now, noticing where our energy is, noticing if it's ours, if it's not ours, and doing this kind of process of deep self-inquiry on the level of the body to help then clear anything that's ready to be released.
I love that. And I'm thinking like, so even if you go through these processes and you feel a release in your body and your body itself is healed, I feel like as human beings, like we're such like storytellers, like we attach ourselves to stories. Like even when you think about your past, it's like your interpretation is completely different than, let's say you have this story about like your relationship with your mom or your dad, and like you don't even realize like it's a story that you kind of created. Like you combined a bunch of like moments, you created a story, and you kind of just repeat it to yourself as like the defining moment of like what made you the way you are. So even if you do heal these things in your body and you can feel that release and have this clear slate to move forward, do you think that you almost need like a new mental story too? Like which is hard because like you're saying, we're kind of moving away from this heady space and going more into our bodies, but then what do we do with that space in our mind and that story we've created if our body has moved on?
Yeah, this is so interesting because I actually had this experience kind of recently. I have like abandonment, betrayal wounds coming from, who even knows what it's coming from? Don't need to get caught in the story of it, right? But I run the pattern and I can feel unsafe. From little things, you know, is someone not texting you back in a certain amount of time, right? We all have that. I don't want to say we all do, but that's how it can manifest for me sometimes. So I've been on this path for a while, and I know the pattern from a mental perspective. I know when it's activated, and I know what it feels like also in the body. So I had kind of a trigger a couple months ago. I think it was someone like not texting me back or whatever. And I could hear the gears turning in my brain thinking, okay, I wonder if I'll never hear from them again, or though they don't like me anymore, or whatever the thing. And then I was like, but how does my body feel right now? And my body felt totally fine. And I didn't have that feeling in my body of like tightness in my stomach, or feeling like I'm unsafe, or that, you know, have anxiety starting to build or rise. And it was like just the process of noticing and then also checking in with my body, knowing that there's like two separate things kind of happening at once. And often they're linked, but they became unlinked over the process of me maybe doing some of this work over the last several years. And then by me asking, where is this my body? Do I feel in my body? And the answer being, no, I don't at all. It totally soothed my mind. And I was like, this is so funny. The monkey mind still wants to churn and still wants to go because this is what's kept us safe. This is that same kind of fight or flight thing of like I'm going to die because this person doesn't like me and they're going to kick me out of the tribe, and then I'm going to be alone, fend for myself in the wilderness. Like, it stems from that, you know? And so it's like, okay, that's funny. This pattern is still running, but I actually have kind of severed it from my body, and my body feels totally fine. So I'm going to trust my body. I'm going to trust that. And then I'll notice the pattern and I'll laugh at it and be aware of it. And this is when what comes back to like connecting with the witness behind the thoughts, connecting with the container, not the contents, and being like, I am not my thoughts. My thoughts are a part of me, and I'll honor them and love this amazing hardware, software that I have running. Like, how cool is this whole system? But it's not me, and I don't necessarily have to get caught in the story. And that's freedom. That's so beautiful. And then you can be like, well, you know, what does my body feel? And now, like, where do I want to go with that? Like, you know, and so I think you can untether them. You can sever them from each other. And I think it can happen either way. Maybe it's the mind first that stops having those patterns from therapy or from whatever, or maybe it's the body. But either way, once you start to then ask yourself that deeper question of, oh, but where do I feel this in my body? Or, oh, is this mine? Or, oh, you know, like just starting to inquire a little bit deeper into that moment, that feeling, or even just saying, I'm feeling this in my body. When did I start feeling like this? Was it after this conversation with this person? Oh, maybe I'm carrying it from them. Maybe it's their unprocessed feeling that I'm carrying, and I don't want to, that's not my circus, not my monkeys. I don't want to carry that anymore. So I think it's just asking those deeper layers, those deeper questions, once you just start to notice something. And then in that way, you're also attuning to the witness behind the experience and not the experience itself.
So when you were talking about relationships, first of all, I have the same thing, like the insecure attachment that pops up for me a lot.
Yeah.
Really related to that. And then maybe that is your experience with that is kind of why you touched on the concept of, how do you say the word, enmeshed?
Enmeshment, yeah.
So this is a word that I just recently heard, looked up, and it was because I felt like I was experiencing it. So, and I think I read it in one of your captions or something, but I'm curious to hear like what the definition is. And then to bring it further, I know that it's a bit of a problem with like tuning into your own needs and setting boundaries that are healthy for yourself. So yeah, I'd love for you to.
This is so big. And this was kind of like my journey and why I got into sound and breath and all these things, because they were tools for me to establish stronger boundaries, because I was taking on other people's experiences. I was trying to process it for them. I wasn't living my life. I was living, especially other like partners. And I think for women, this is a really common, and it's for deep feelers in general, for empaths, for people that identify as highly sensitives, which we all are. It's just some of us are more tuned to it than others. And so what I found and what my process was it's a journey of, first of all, not being grounded in your body, whether that is that you are up here in the mental spheres and tuning to other people's needs. It's a leaving pattern. It's a dissociative pattern of maybe not feeling safe when you were a kid or a baby, and feeling like you needed to attune to other people's needs or the environment to kind of establish that safety. And so you have this pattern of kind of going outside of yourself to seek that. And so in a way, it's almost like walking on eggshells, just kind of already anticipating how someone else might respond to something. And that affects how then you express yourself or where you feel safe. And so a process of coming home to yourself, coming home to your body, and creating that safety within, that you can always land there, that you're always safe in your body. That was a huge mantra for me. I would say this to myself all the time. It is safe for me to be in my body. I'm safe in my body. It is safe for me to be in my body in this moment. I would just run that all the time, because say it until you can hear it. I mean, I think that's really huge. So then once you're like grounded in your body, then you can start to attune to like where your boundaries are. And I think a lot of people think about boundaries as like either you have strong boundaries or you have weak boundaries. And it's like very black and white. But actually, our boundaries are always changing. They're very fluid. They can be porous and they can be rigid. And you can be porous with certain people and rigid with other people. So it's not like you look the same way across the board. I used to have really strong boundaries with certain people and then really, really weak boundaries with other people, like especially partners or parents or whatever. It would be confusing because it's like, well, I'm standing up for myself here, but, or like maybe I'm too rigid with these people, like not letting them in, not opening my heart to them. But then with this person, I'm like, jello.
Right.
And so, first of all, it's fluid, it's always changing, and it's your prerogative. You're allowed to change how you feel and how you interact with people at any given moment. But coming into your body, knowing what feels right for you, and then honoring that is number one. So enmeshment, when I think of that, I think of the quantum physics nature of it, which is that when two particles meet, they're connected forever. And this is like really true. Like they've done tests where like they have like two particles, they've been connected, and then one goes to space and one's on Earth, and then like they have them move and they move in the same way. And like, it's just so crazy to think about. So, I think that we have a lot of karmic relationships. I believe that we like incarnate onto this planet with certain souls to help us learn and grow and evolve. And that's kind of like our karmic contracts that we have. And so there are people that I think have keys for us and we have keys for them, and they help unlock and open things in our lives. This is just like my belief. Regardless of what you believe, there are obviously people in our lives that we know that kind of come in, they say for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, right? That like are here to kind of trigger us or catalyze things. And often they'll continue to like reopen certain wounds over and over again. And so these are like master teachers, and we're master teachers for them too. And often it's relationships or parents that are like our closest people around us are kind of re-triggering these patterns of behavior, or noticing where we are enmeshed, or noticing where we're outsourcing ourselves, or where we're not asking for help or getting our needs met because we're too busy attuning to other people's. And so I think it comes down to understanding why that pattern exists within you, first of all. Maybe it's a lack of safety or security. Maybe it's because there is a feeling of not being safe in your own body and not wanting to even feel into that, and it feels safer to attune to someone else's. And in a way, you're kind of like, what I often will say, when we were talking about this earlier, is like, if you notice a pattern of something happening around you a lot, like an example I gave was people ghosting you all the time. Maybe you're ghosting yourself. So it's like, okay, then bringing that pattern that you're noticing back to yourself and be like, where am I doing this to myself? And that can maybe start to help you attune to getting your needs met. But often, enmeshment is kind of making sure other people are good before you even ask yourself what you need, what you want. So I think there's a lot of things you can do when you start to notice these patterns that can start to break them, whether it is like a pattern interrupt or something, or just choosing yourself in whatever moment, whatever that means. If you normally, you're like, wouldn't go to yoga because you know your partner's going to go home and you want to make them dinner, be like, no, actually, I'm going to go to yoga because that's what I want to do right now. And so continually asking yourself, what do I need right now? How can I get this need met? Is it something I need to ask from someone else? Is it something I can do for myself? And just, again, this process of self-inquiry, just asking yourself questions of what might feel right. And then I think on deeper, more intensive levels, if there's especially like an ex or something, or someone in your life that like you really feel super enmeshed with and you need to untether from, there's like deeper practices you could do to release those ties, to allow those claws to come out of you and not give away your energy anymore. So it also becomes a practice of mastering your energy and the flow. You could be across the globe from someone and still be feeling their feelings, or still be outsourcing your energy, still be giving them your energy. And I will say that this also is a very common pattern between narcissists and empaths. So I'll just say that because I think if anyone is noticing this pattern, if they identify as an empath, if they identify as being highly sensitive, most likely these enmeshments are happening with narcissists. And that's something to look into and explore. And 1 in 4 people are narcissists. I mean, it's a spectrum. It's not like they're all Ted Bundy, or they're all, some people mean very well and are deep feeling people, but they have narcissistic manipulative traits. So those people are kind of like energy vampires. They're always trying to pull your energy out of you. And guess what? We play a role because we allow them to. So it's also taking accountability for how you're playing the role in that dynamic where you are giving yourself away. You teach people how to treat you. So take accountability for that. Take responsibility, and then flip the script, change the pattern. Notice if you are outsourcing your energy all the time to someone. Notice how you can call that back to yourself and give yourself that. And I would say do whatever it feels like would be the most selfish thing ever, because it probably isn't, and it's exactly what you need to do. So I think that is kind of like a little bit about enmeshment. I mean, this is such a deep topic.
It really is.
So deep.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, self-inquiry, deep questions, taking responsibility, noticing where your energy is. All of that I think can be kind of starting points for that.
Or even your patterns within that experience, because I think when I would start to notice that's happening for me, it was kind of like, I was going to say like a dependency on their approval maybe, or my desire to have them in my life is heightened than somebody that I would be a little bit more okay with them coming and going. So the stakes are higher, and now I'm bending a lot of my boundaries or my needs in order to keep them around. And that can stem from what we were talking about earlier, like abandonment, things like that, where you have to self-sacrifice in order to make sure other people are okay, which in turn actually builds for a more empathetic person, which creates a beautiful type of person. So you actually kind of benefit from it like later in life.
Oh, yeah.
But like,
it's all perfect.
Yeah, it all works out.
Yeah.
But like checking those patterns, because I think my reaction in the past would be that I'm noticing I'm experiencing like higher stake in terms of like wanting you, needing you. And instead of me going within and working out what's going on there and exercising certain boundaries, I'd be like, well, I'm just going to cut this person out of my life.
Right. Yeah, because you can go to avoidant really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, people think codependency is like you have to always be with someone, or like you always, but it can look like total independence, like distance, like avoidancy. So that is also a pattern of it. And it's interesting to notice when you flip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you were saying too is like finding that sense of self-worth within and not needing it to be defined by someone else's perception of you.
Right.
It's like, you don't even need, I don't care how you feel about me. That's not my responsibility. And that actually has nothing to do with me. How I feel about myself is fucking everything. And I think, you know, it's really hard in this social media day and age when the idea of being perceived is so, you know, we're engaging with it all the time, 24/7. We have these avatars on our Instagram, our TikTok, they're like always socializing it, and we're curating our experience of how we're being perceived. And then we also have like millions of, you know, not millions necessarily, but like all these people that are projecting onto us their perception of who they think we are. And that can get really muddy because that can affect the way we think of ourselves. So again, I think like finding that sense of self-worth within and being really rooted in that, then you're not going to need other people's approval.
Right. Okay, one more question.
Yeah.
So was my ending question, but if you could break the mold on one thing forever, just something that you're in charge of. You're like, I'm this is what I would love to break the mold on. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. This came up in a women's circle this week, actually. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to make the right decision or to have like a really clear, focused idea of like what would be the best path for me. It can create almost like I can feel paralyzed and not make a decision because I don't really trust that intuitive feeling always of like what the right direction is. And so what I'd like to release and break the mold of is the idea that there even is a perfect or right path. And instead, and looking, you know, at my life and how it's unfurled and unfolded, it's all been exactly perfect and right. And this needed to happen, so this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And, you know, of course, we create the narrative. Hindsight is 20/20. And we can look back and see that, and it's much easier that way. But just to remind myself of that every day and in every moment, because in every moment we are making decisions and we are kind of choosing our path. It's a process of surrender. It's a process of letting go. Nothing is really in our control at all. And I often will say this in my classes, except for our breath and our energy. And that's all you can do. You can focus on your breath, and that can regulate your nervous system, and that can help regulate your energy. And that's really all we have control over, like truly. And so to continually step into surrender and trust that we are always on the right path, that there's no wrong decisions, that everything is unfolding perfectly. And on a long enough timeline and from a big enough vantage point, we can see that very obviously. But when you're in it, in the weeds, it's really hard to remember that. So I think that's kind of something I would like to break the mold on, is just it all feeling like anything could be wrong. Because it's always working out.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's just take a few deep breaths together just to come into this space to ground. Maybe you'd like to close your eyes. Maybe you'd like to place a hand on the heart, a hand on the belly, just as a symbol of grounding, of dropping in. Maybe feeling the warmth of your hands on your body, feeling a sense of grounding and coming into this space. Let's take a nice, slow, deep breath through the nose, filling the belly, rising to the heart, holding at the top, and let it go with a sigh. Two more like that. Inhale through the nose, filling the belly, rising to the heart, holding at the top, and let it go with a sigh. Last one. Inhale through the nose, filling the belly, expanding the heart, holding at the top, maybe taking in one more sip, and let it all go. And just follow this sound into silence for a moment. Just descending down deeper into yourself as the sound fades. Feel yourself melting into the earth. Really allow yourself to be held here. And attune to your own inner stillness and silence as well. Taking you deeper with every exhale. And notice where these sounds land today. Just open yourself to receive. Trust your body's intrinsic ability to connect with vibration. And know that wherever your mind, your spirit goes, your body will be here to catch you. take a deep breath through the nose, just coming back into this space. And let it go. Let's take 2 inhales now through the nose. And let it go with an SH sound. Another one like that. 2 inhales through the nose. And let it go with an SH. And just take a moment to feel into your body. Notice if anything has shifted, if there's any spaciousness, no matter how subtle. Just taking some spaciousness here to integrate. Maybe still feeling those sounds reverberating around your body. Maybe take a moment here to feel the clothes on your skin. Notice any sounds in the room, any smells, just awakening the senses to this present moment. Maybe introducing a little light movement, twinkling the fingers and the toes. Just getting back into your body in any way that feels nice and juicy here. And if stillness calls to you, definitely trust whatever feels best in this moment. I thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And know that you can always tune into the stillness and silence within.